Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back for part two. I'm hoping it's just part two. There'll just be part two of this 3,000 video Q&A. So we're just going to jump right in where we ended off and hope that this can be done in under 30 minutes. So our next question is Sagnik Dutta asks, what are your favorite books set in India? For me, there's no comparison with R.K. Narayan. He's my absolute favorite. I think he's just great. I wish that there were a whole shelf of him in Black Spy and Penguin Classics. Maybe there is, but I don't know of them. And I would love that if just all of him were in Black Spy and Penguin Classics. Curious Reader asks, when are you going to teach us all Latin? This came up a couple of times. I guess last year I mentioned that maybe we could do a series of videos where I teach you Latin, or I teach the beginnings of Latin. I can't imagine why anybody would want that. Isn't this channel boring enough as it is? And Curious Reader also wants to know favorite historical fiction writers working today. And of course, you know, people like C.J. Sansom or Robert Harris when he does historical fiction, or of course Hilary Mantel, who's got a new book coming out. But there are tons and tons of others. I know I read tons of historical novels every year, and this is one of the few genres where I read widely and self-published, because I used to do that. I used to be the U.S. editor for the Historical Novel Review Online, so I was sent box loads of self-published historical fiction. I got a sense from that of how good a lot of that was. And one of the people that I want to recommend, by far the best writer, the best series that I got during that period, was Andrew Levkoff, who does a series called The Bow of Heaven, it's Roman historical fiction, mainly about the plutocrat and wannabe general Marcus Crassus. And the Bow of Heaven is terrific, absolutely terrific. You're going to love it, and you're not going to have heard of it, as is the case with self-published work. You're probably not going to have heard of it, but give it a try, especially if you have a sweet tooth for Roman historical fiction. Just buy the first one, and you'll see what I mean. This author is every bit as good as all the big names, the big mainstream published names that I would praise. Just happens not to have gone that route. Steve Watson asks, what's the best place to start reading ancient history, and what should you avoid? And the best place to start reading ancient history is, for me, my advice is it's the same as the best place to start reading anything, which is a long encyclopedia entry, a Wikipedia entry, many Wikipedia entries. Get your feet underneath you first. The worst place, the thing to avoid, is big, heavy, detailed work that is assuming you know a lot, because not only will it leave you behind, but it will discourage you. So my advice is always do basic reading first. Get a good sense of the shape and nature of the subject first yourself. There are no points here for autodidactism. There are no points for rough-hewn individualism. Get your feet underneath you first. So if you're interested in, for instance, let's say, the Year of the Four Emperors, a fantastically interesting period immediately following the assassination of Nero, where you have Otho, Galba, and Vitellius, and then finally Vespasian each one of those men declared himself or was declared emperor in the course of a year, had coins made, had all sorts of grandeur, had delusions of grandeur, and then the winner ended up being Vespasian and his sons. That was 1 year, and there have been many books on that subject. And my advice would be, let's say that is the thing that fascinates you about Roman history and you want to start Roman history there. My advice would be read about that on Wikipedia. Type in Year of the Four Emperors on Wikipedia, read that entry, and follow all of the hot links. So read the biography of Vitellius, read the biography of Otho and Galba, read the biography of Vespasian. And then when you're done with that, when you've got the idea of that in your head, then move on to one of those histories, and then another one of those histories, and so on and so forth. And then when you've done the modern histories, you can look at their bibliographies and see which primary sources they're all relying on and go and read those. And then, before you know it, you'll be reading ancient history. But make it easy on yourself first. Let's see here. Jack Riley says, do you share my love of the works of Robert Caro? I do. What other epic works of biography do you recommend? Many epic biographies are my favorite thing. I would recommend the books of Andrew Roberts. If you haven't read Andrew Roberts, he's a terrific read. But there are many others. And Jack Riley also asked, what are your favorite films? And there's a long list. The film version of The 12 Angry Men, film version of A Man for All Seasons, The Life of Brian, of course. But my number one favorite movie of all time is The Lion in Winter, the film version of The Lion in Winter. So there's a lot of similarity in a lot of those because those are stage plays that were made into movies. But I think that's just happenstance. There are plenty of others that I love that aren't. Let's see here. Richard Farley asks my favorite mystery writers. And right now it's Georgette Heyer, of course, because I'm reading my way through some Georgette Heyers that I just found at the Brattle Bookshop. It could be, in a week, it could be somebody else. But right now it's her. And he also asked my favorite Sherlock Holmes pastiche work. And I've read an enormous amount of it, but for heft, I think, for literary heft, it would probably be John Gardner's books on Moriarty, his Moriarty novels. They tend to me, even after all this time, they tend to strike me as high water marks for Sherlock Holmes pastiche. Rodion Raskolnikov asks, will you continue the series of biographies and given errors? And since I don't want him to take an axe to my head, I'll say yes. Sarah Hall asks, if you could only keep one book from each genre, what would they be? No idea. No idea at all. John Petter says, you claim to read very fast. Is there an art or technique to line skipping, and anything wrong with doing that? Will abridgments be the future of classics and literature? I want to start off my answer here by saying I don't just claim to read really fast. I do, in fact, read really fast. If I were a normal person, with the weird numbers that I cite on this channel, you would, I guess, be within your rights to say you claim to read really fast. It would still be rude. But you'd at least be within your rights. But I'm not a normal person. I am accountable for what I read. Not only to a large reading audience with book reviews, where if I didn't read it, just claim to read it, I would be called on the carpet immediately. I wouldn't have a job anymore. But also to you, to all of you on this channel. Do you get the impression that I don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about the books I read? No. I don't just claim to read really fast. I do read really fast. But I don't do it by line skipping. Or space skipping or anything like gapping words. The popular method of speed reading is to do just that. Skip lines, gap out words, that sort of thing. To sort of hopscotch faster along a paragraph and then a page. That's the popular method of doing that. And like the Evelyn Wood speed reading class and all, they all advocates that sort of thing. Read War and Peace in an hour, that sort of thing. But you're doing that. Those methods are based on not reading everything, on not reading the whole work, on just sort of squashing it, compressing it, and extracting the essence, the marrow. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think you lose, of course, you lose all the nuance. You lose any point to reading to do that. But there's nothing wrong with doing it. But I couldn't do it. Because I'm accountable for everything. I'm accountable not only for all the words, but for the affect, for the atmosphere. I never know when I'm reading a new book if I'm going to be called upon to review it. And if that's true, I am responsible for it, so I can't not read parts of it. But in terms of the second question, will abridgments be the future of classics and literature? No, absolutely not. No, publishers used to embrace abridgments. They don't anymore. Not at all. They don't anymore, unless you're seeing something that I'm not seeing. Once upon a time, in the 60s and 70s, yeah, there were abridged War and Peaces, abridged Anna Kareninas all the time. They're everywhere. For busy professionals on the go, here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to know. Here's the shortened version. Abridged Bibles. The Dartmouth Bible was enormously popular because it was abridged. But nowadays, nobody does that anymore. Nobody does abridgments. That's just fallen out of favor, and I'm glad of it because that's the one literary thing for the literary marketplace that I don't like at all. Don't abridge anything. And publishers don't do it. So I don't... In fact, if anything, publishers, when they come to classic canonical literature, are promising this is an expanded version. This is the biggest version you're going to get. Because we've found all sorts of stuff that is usually abridged out of this. But not the other way, I don't think. Let's see here. Melrose has a few questions. How in the world do you remember every book you've read? I don't. I don't remember every book I've read. I might have a better recall of some of the details of the books I read than some people, but that's because I don't do anything else. You would too if you didn't do anything else. If you had nothing, you didn't have kids' names to remember, you'd remember a lot more than you do now. And also, if you worked that muscle, you would. Also, Melrose asked, can you share some photos of your traveling days? No, I can't. No, I can't. Because if you're traveling, you're either taking photos or you're enjoying what you're seeing. You're not doing both. And how many people do you know who would back that up? They might not agree, they might not admit it, but how many people do you know who come back from their whirlwind three-city Florence, Milan, and Venice, Florence, Rome, and Venice tour of Italy, and they've got 1,000 photos and they don't remember anything themselves? They don't remember anything. Or how many Instagram posers do you know who have just come back from the Great Pyramids of Giza, and all they can tell you about is the struggle they went through to get that shot? I never brought a camera with me. I had a journal, a blank journal. I often made sketches in there, and I'm sure I'm in a lot of photos by other people, but I never brought a camera. I just went to enjoy everywhere I went to enjoy. Most of the time, I wasn't even remotely what you would consider a tourist. I was just sipping wine on a table at a city square. I was reading the paper. I was playing with stray dogs. So I don't have any photos. So and then Melrose also asked, if you weren't reviewing books for a living, would you still read as much? It's another hint that came up many times in these questions of me apparently losing my livelihood. I don't know what the rest of you know that I don't. But in answer to the question, if I weren't reviewing for a living, I don't think I would read so many books. No. I don't think it's an excellent question. I don't think I would. I think I would probably do a lot more rereading, and probably a lot more writing or sketching. I don't think my time would be so maniacally filled with books. And Melrose also asked, would you still read all the new releases if you had to pay for them? And no, I wouldn't. How could I? That's the thing that breaks my heart about my current job, is these books that I show you that we get in the mail every day. Even on a bad day, even on a week, a slight day for traffic here on this channel, I am unpacking at least $200 worth of books. And that's every day. And let's say one book out of each of those mail hauls you find actually interesting enough to want to buy. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars by the end of the year. It's ridiculous. Books are so expensive, and much more expensive in for instance, Australia, where I hear nightmare stories about how expensive books are. No, I couldn't. The only way I would be able to do it would be to do what a lot of you do, which would be, and what a lot of people that I know do, and that is to hang around your library. Get yourself on every reading waiting list in the world, where you're just waiting for 60 people ahead of you to get done with the book before you get to see it. So you might be on a list for a new release, but you never read it when it is a new release. I would have to do that if nobody has enough money to do what I do if they had to pay for the books. So no, I guess it would be new releases at the library. I don't see any other way that I would do it. Maybe in a circumstance like that, some of these subscription deals, Amazon Unlimited or something like that, maybe they would start to make sense. Amazon Unlimited certainly would, right? That would probably be the way that I would go, would be you pay $15 a month and you can read new releases. And you don't get to keep them, but at least you've read them. You're not on any kind of waiting list. But thankfully, I don't have to worry about that at the moment. Linda W. says, could you please tell the moose story? Many calls for my famous moose story in these questions. And I someday, when we are all together at SteveCon, and I am good and properly soused, I will tell my moose story, and my baboon story, and my hyena story. Isaac Randall asks, what styles or periods of music do you like? Does music require your full attention the way reading does? Music requires my full attention the way reading does if I choose that piece of music, right? There is no passive or relaxed way to listen to the Rachmaninoff 3. There's no way to do that. But my favorite music is Baroque music, which can very much trickle and ripple in the background. It's gorgeously done, I think, far, far underestimated for its beauty and its complexity, but you can have it on as essentially background music, and that's my favorite thing. Let's see here. Starscream Live has a few questions. Who is your favorite Victorian era author? That would be, I'm afraid, John Ruskin. Who is your favorite what's your favorite Victorian novel? That is Middlemarch by a wide margin. Favorite modernist author and novel? That would be The Recognitions by William Gaddis. A brilliant work that I think is just about to come out in the New York Review of Books reprint. Big fat reprint volume, so it'll get another lease on life. Tons of people pretending that they've already read it. And also, which of all the English monarchs intrigues you the most? Now, you've seen my library tour, I have a whole bookcase full of English monarch biographies, but I know this is going to seem like pandering, but it is absolutely true. The one that intrigues me the most is Queen Elizabeth II, the current English monarch. And why wouldn't she? God, what a life. What a life. A monarch who has had to come to terms without saying anything with forces and changes that no other monarch in the history of the world has ever had to deal with. I find it fascinating. I cannot read enough about the woman. I mean, there's a lot of junk that's written about her, but I cannot read enough of the good stuff. So yeah, it would be the current English monarch, who I happen to think will be the last one. Then let's see here. Lisa Garrity has a few questions. If you didn't write, again, we're wondering about my future. If you didn't write, what would you do for work? Sell books or something else entirely? Well, there's selling books as a possibility, but it's a slim possibility. There's only one retail bookstore in Boston, for instance, that's big, that where you don't have to be waiting forever to get the one opening that's there, and it's a big Barnes and Noble in a shopping center, and I worked there for a long time, and I saw the way it was changing. I know perfectly well what I would encounter if I walked in the door now. Nobody there would know me now. If I walked in the door now and said I'd like to apply for work, I know just what would happen. I'd be told, well, we can offer you 20 hours a week, all of them in the cafe serving drinks. You'll never see a book, never touch a book. And if I said to the person on the other side of the desk, well, no, I'm applying to be a book clerk. I'm applying to be a bookseller. I don't want to work in the cafe at all. They'd say, we're not interested. We can't take you. So bookselling would be a natural thing, but maybe I wouldn't do that. So, and who knows? There might be something else. Maybe something that's not book related at all. Or maybe I could get a job at the library. But anyway, let's see here. Lisa Garrity also asked, if you and Frida had to move, would you move to another state, another country, or just another block in Boston? I would do my best to stay in Boston. And let's see, she also asked, who are the most underrated contemporary authors still writing? Name always comes to mind is Percival Everett. Most of you don't know, I'm sure, have never heard of Percival Everett, but he does great novels. They're always fantastic. I always rejoice when I see a new one. C.M. Spiff asks, what do you make of Harry and Meghan stepping away from official duties? A huge thing that has rocked royal watchers in the last 2 weeks, which is a great deal different from what it started out as. It started out as Prince Harry saying, well, I've got this new wife, and she's not in royal circles. She's not from any of those, the right prep schools or anything like that. And she also doesn't like my family. She is a typical vindictive girlfriend, a typical manipulative girlfriend who just wants me to disassociate. Most manipulative, the really bad girlfriends, act like cults. They want to deperson you from all of your support systems and have you to themselves. The normal people don't do that, but really bad manipulative girlfriends do. And she strikes me as one of those because the first thing she did was alienate this guy from his family. And that was bad enough when initially Prince Harry said, I'm going to decrease my royal portfolio. I'm not going to be doing all of these public events. I'm not going to be lending my name to all of these charities. I'm going to step back quite a bit. But then he added the unprecedented other decision, which was that he no longer wanted to be Prince Harry, just Harry Windsor. He wanted to disassociate himself from his duchy royalties that have been in his particular royal name for centuries. Essentially become a private citizen, or as close as he could be to becoming a private citizen. And the palace has put the best possible spin on things, saying, we wish them all the best and all that that's like that. But a line has clearly been drawn here. It's absolutely fascinating. I think in 10 years we'll learn a lot more about it, but I think it's fascinating. I gobble up royalty magazines anyway, even though it's worse than looking through a keyhole. It's like looking through a shot glass through a keyhole, but it still gives you as much as you're going to get. And I found it just fascinating. I know that the whole story, nothing like the whole story is being told. So I don't know what the reason is, I guess is what I'm saying. It could be Meghan, who's just saying, look, it's me or it's them. The stereotypical bad girlfriend thing. It's me or it's them. It's me or your family. Most people's family aren't the royal family of the UK, but nevertheless, really bad manipulative girlfriends have been saying that since the dawn of time. It's them or me. It could be that. Or it could be a combination of that and that they both know something about Prince Andrew that we don't know. That they both know that an evil time is coming and they want no part of it whatsoever. I don't know, one way or another. We'll see. We'll see how it all shakes out. Let's see here. Matt Crash says, can you recommend any books on the Troubles in Northern Ireland? There have been a million. Of course, it's predictable, but I would probably recommend if you want to start. Tim Pat Coogan's books are good enough to start. He's written quite a few. Get through a couple of those. Again, reading the Wikipedia entries along the way, and that you'll be well started. Matt Crash also asks, if there are 3 historical events you could witness, what would they be? And one would be the death of Julius Caesar. I would like to be standing there and watch it happen. Then another would be the death of King Charles II. I'd like to be standing there and watch it happen. And the third one would be the death of Richard Nixon. Now, 2 of those, I would just be standing in a death room, watching, listening for the death rattle. But I'd still be willing to do it. Then Samuel Durham has a few questions. He wants to know 3 publishing trends since 2016, when I started my channel, that have annoyed me. And there are plenty, but if I have to reduce myself to 3, I would say one would be diversity bingo. A thing that on YouTube was called diversity bingo, where we're a major publishing house, we're editors and publishing house in-house readers, and our mission, stated right there above the lintel, is that we want to bring the best quality work to our reading public, and we will search high and low for that quality work. And yet, what you're doing all day long is not that. Instead, you've got a checklist. Do we have a Gambian? Do we have an amputee? Do we have a war veteran? Do we have someone who was a conscious objector to the war? Do we have these category identity boxes? And well, I've never heard anyone say this, but nevertheless, I get the strong impression that the attitude is, do we have these identity boxes, and who the hell cares whether the books are any good? Certainly, a lot of the crap that I have read could only be explained if the idea was, who the hell cares what the book is? So that'd be one publishing trend that has intensified enormously in the last 4 years that I wish didn't exist at all. Another one would be skyrocketing prices. Of course, that is a standard complaint of mine. The publishing industry is killing itself by doing this, by having these prices be just enormous and growing all the time. And the third one is inept marketing. The publishing industry is the last industry anywhere in the world that has no idea that social media exists, no idea that BookTube exists, no idea that most of them don't. Some of them do a little, but they could do a lot better than they do. That's where their readers are, and most of them don't know that. Then he also asked 3 BookTube trends that have annoyed me since 2016, and the first of those would also be diversity bingo. There are booktubers I know perfectly well are good, strong, adventurous readers, and they have, maybe unbeknownst to themselves, but certainly it's not changing, they have made an absolute ironclad fetish out of diversity reading. They are, I believe, at heart, whether they realize it or not, terrified of having a mob turn on them and call them a bigot. A mob they don't even know. I cannot imagine what it would be like to have your reading choices governed so much by fear. But nevertheless, I know perfectly sound, sharp-minded, adventurous, discriminating booktubers who absolutely will not read a book by a white man. They absolutely will not do it. And that wasn't true before 2016. That has happened since then, and it's ridiculous. So I watch their channels. I still love watching them. I'm still their biggest fan. But I watch their channels, and they're saying, well, I'm at the end of the year, and I'm doing my stats, and I notice no Serbian trans writers, and that's really bad. I really have to do something about that. Why? Who says? What on earth? So there's that. There's diversity bingo for BookTube. There's also purity test dogpiling. Doesn't so much happen in our little corner of BookTube, but in the YA corner of BookTube, oh my God, dogpiling is the favorite indoor sport. And it's loathsome. It's just bullying. I can't stand it. And the third one would be holdouts. The people out there, I'm sure that Samuel has plenty in his own comments. I have plenty in my own comments. Everybody does. People that would love making a BookTube channel, and they just don't do it. They think there's this partition. I'm watching, but I can't do this. And that's not true. If I can do it, anybody can do it. So holdouts bug me. And then he also wants to know 3 publishing and BookTube trends that delighted or uplifted me. And the first one would be actual diversity. I know that doesn't sound like it was predictable after the first 2 tirades, but I love the fact that publishing lists for fiction and nonfiction are now all over the place. I never know what viewpoints or backgrounds I'm going to get. I learn so much from that sort of thing. I just love it. Absolutely love it. When the books are really good. I just think that's fantastic. So I love the fact that the publishing world, the lists for the publishing world look so different than they did 20 years ago. I just love that. Then the second thing would be friendship. I've made a lot of friends on BookTube, and I absolutely love it. And also sharing. I know these are namby-pamby answers, but they're still true. Our little corner of BookTube is a great place. We all like each other. We all get along, even if we disagree with each other. We support each other, watch each other, discuss each other. I just love it. Let's see here. JV asks, how do you catalog books you have in your personal library? I don't at the moment. I had a spreadsheet that Sam at Sam's Nonsense gave me, and it worked for a while. Then I realized I was never consulting it. I had before that for many years books of one kind or another, ledgers of one kind or another, where I would carefully note which books I got and from where, and you know, all the details about them, publicity contacts if I had any, what I was getting rid of, and I would mark that as well. And I used to keep those books for years on end, and then I would realize, you know, I've never looked at this. I've never consulted it at all. It's a waste of time to do. In other words, if you're doing anything that you're not consulting, it's a waste of time. So I just stopped doing it. I just stopped doing anything like it. I have a journal, and in my journal I write about reading all the time, but it's not in a systematic way. I'm not charting anything. I don't do it anymore. I rely on memory. Let's see here. Nazi Lamek says, it would be great if you could film more starter kits. I agree, although that's not a question. J.E. Crow says, of all the things you've seen or experienced in your life, in your travels, what made you feel the greatest wonder? And I don't need to go to Split Waterfalls or the Aurora Borealis or the Great Pyramids to experience wonder. I am wonder prone. I experience it a lot. One thing that came immediately to mind was as local as you get. My previous two dogs, Lucy and Malin, my pointer Malin and my Basset Hound Lucy, were diagnosed in the course of the same week. Two different vet visits gave them fatal diagnoses. Two different things wrong. One with Malin, one with Lucy. I took Lucy in alone for her appointment and was told that she had inoperable cancer and that it was advanced. And then I was devastated, and I recovered and hugged her a lot. And then it was time for Malin to have her appointment. I was told she is also dying, and that it's going to happen soon. And by weird, macabre chance, the time was just about exactly the same. I lost them within months of each other. But Lucy deteriorated much faster than Malin did, and Malin had always been protective of Lucy anyway. And the very careful care and gentle concern that Malin showed for Lucy in the last months of her life, I wondered at that. I was amazed by it. Heartbroken, but also stunned. And that was just recently, and as local as it gets. And J.E. Crow also wants to know, will you ever write an autobiography? I suppose I should. I suppose I should write Odd Dog one of these days. Let's see here. John Nemzow says, what do you think of Robert Heinlein's career? Pretty interesting. I admit I find him terrifically enjoyable to read, but he is gone and not coming back thanks to the aforementioned purity tests. So if I'm going to like Robert Heinlein's career, I'm going to do it one remove. He also wants to know what I think of L. Ron Hubbard. Of course he is a fraud. Of course he is a charlatan. Of course he's a bunkum artist, and who talked openly about what the real moneymaker, if you really want to sit back and make money, mint money, would be to make a religion, and then did. And that there are people who believe it. There are people who know that perfectly well. All those comments were made in interviews. They're all public. You can read them. And people know that and believe it anyway, because people put their hopes in all kinds of things. And I would excuse that. I would excuse the bunkum artist if his fiction had ever been any good, but none of it is. It's all terrible. So I have double the contempt for him. Not only is he a charlatan who has caused misery to lots of people long after he's been dead, but he's also a bad science fiction writer. But wasn't there another one? Oh, yes. Favorite story or book by Robert Silverberg? It'd be the standards. Up the Line. Night Flyers. Especially Dying Inside. I think that's a very predictable answer, but nevertheless, I think it's a terrific book. It was a terrific short story. The only person who doesn't agree with that is Robert Silverberg, but that's because he's really... some old men get to the point where if you tell them anything, you tell them the sun is up, they'll say, no, it's not. So once he's an author, once his book's out in the world, he's just not the critic. So Dying Inside but all predictable choices for Robert Silverberg. And John's last question is your favorite book in the Chronicles of Amber series. That would be Nine Princes in Amber. I think the Amber books get weaker as they go along. I know that some people think otherwise, but I've read the whole series twice now, and I noticed it just as much the second time as I did the first time. Let's see here. Mayberry Book Club asks, would I join him if he comes to Boston for a Brattle visit? I absolutely would. I expect that all of you, when you come to Boston, will go to the Brattle with me. And also, what do I like most about house cats? Mainly that they live in other people's houses. Tomorrow's Classic wants to know what's the best Superman novel. That's a matter of taste. My own favorite is Elliot Magen's Superman Last Son of Krypton, the novel that came out when the Christopher Reeve movie came out. Carolina Sequeira says, why do you read books in translation when you can read them in the original? Well, a lot of work goes into the translations, right? And translations are also the ones that get reviewed and talked about and recommended. Most of the people that I know are monoglot English readers, so I need to know about translations in order to recommend books to them. And it's also fun. It's fun to see what translators do. And she also asked a George Eliot biography recommendation. I know this is going to sound snotty, but I have never read a George Eliot biography that really pleased me. So I would say just pick one. I don't have one that stands out as a favorite of mine. Matthew L. asks what I think of Dejuna Barnes, John Cowper Powys, and Patrick White. I'm not over the moon about any one of them. I've read representative amounts of each one of them, and I know that they all have ardent fans, but none of them's ever done it for me. Biographia Literaria asks, what is a handful of books that you would like to see made into New York Review of Books classics? The paperback reprint line that they have. And there are quite a few that if I had my druthers, I would do. There's Fiscadoro by Dennis Johnson. There's The Year of Silence by Madison Smart Bell, a beautiful, beautiful novel that isn't well enough known. There's M.A. Harper's novel, For the Love of Robert E. Lee. Talk about beautiful and not known. Nobody knows that book. And For the Love of Robert E. Lee is terrific. Also, Creator by Jeremy Levin, a book that I have praised on this channel before. That's and also long before YouTube, I handed it to a bunch of people. It's a terrific novel, and I'd love it if somebody there knew about it and reprinted it. But there are a bunch of others as well. Then Tyler Curtis says, what is your favorite novels that take place during World War I? The number one that jumps out is an unconventional one. It's Kim Newman's Bloody Red Baron, which is a World War I vampire novel that I just love. I just think it's fantastic. Every bit of it, every paragraph of it, I just think it's terrific. But it's not conventional. It's not, All Quiet on the Western Front or anything like that. A book review or two asks, would you ever consider creating a children's book about you and Frida? I think that's a fun idea. And also wants to know recommendations for Westerns who are not Louis L'Amour. I do have recommendations. I also want to stress Louis L'Amour. You say recommendations for Westerns that aren't Louis L'Amour. Unless you're asking for a father or a grandfather who's read all of Louis L'Amour, if you've read none, you should read some. And not just avoid him because he's big. But I would also recommend Mary Doria Russell, her book Doc and also Epitaph about Doc Holliday and about Wyatt Earp, about the OK Corral. They're amazing. They're amazingly good. Also, the Westerns of Lauren Esselman and Elmore Leonard are also both really, really good. Lauren Esselman did another fantastic novel on the OK Corral. Just fantastic. Let's see here. Steeped in Books asks, who is your favorite contemporary romance writer? I don't have a contemporary. My favorite romance writer for historicals, I think, is probably Tessa Dare. More than anybody else by just a bit. Probably her. Or maybe Laura Lee Gerke. But contemporary, I don't know enough of it yet. I don't have enough. I'm not you. I don't have enough of a lay of the land yet to really pick a favorite. And her second question is, when are you going to host a read-along with Sarah from Steeped in Books? I love the idea. Let's do it. Let's think up a way to do it and get something. It'd be great if we could do a read-along that would get people to try romance novels instead of doing one just for the converted. So we should definitely put our heads together. Oh, God, this has gone on long again, and I'm still nowhere near the end. Oh, God. Okay, this happened last time, too. I thought I was going to get through a Q&A in one video, and I didn't. I didn't come anywhere close. Okay. All right, let's press on for maybe 5 or 6 more minutes. Let's see here. So where were we? Steeped in books. Okay, the Francophile reader is next. She asks, "What's the best book I've read on the French Revolution?" There are quite a few. There's The World of the French Revolution by R.R. Palmer. I don't know if it's still in print, but it's short and terrific. But there's also Thomas Carlyle. His big book on the French Revolution is amazing. It's more impressionistic and novelistic. It's much closer to Victor Hugo than it is to Simon Schama, but still worth reading, absolutely. And the same thing is true of Michelet. Michelet's enormous volume on the French Revolution is now a 2-volume box set. From Gallimard, I think, that I would love to have that box set. Oh my God! But Michelet, you shouldn't miss. Absolutely not on the French Revolution, even though it's maybe a more florid and melodramatic narrative style than we are accustomed to today. Let's see here. Michael Mullins says, "How do you read 150 pages an hour? What is the actual mechanism?" And in his question, he actually says, "I understand not subvocalizing. I understand focus. But what I want to know is, how do you really do it?" And I don't know what to say. I am going to say those things. You may understand them, but if you don't do them, then I don't have any other answers. Those are the answers. Don't subvocalize. That cuts your speed in half or more. And when you read, concentrate on what you're doing. Don't be distracted. Now, you say, "I understand subvocalizing." Don't subvocalize. "I understand focusing." But what is the actual mechanism? As if you do those two things. When I'd be willing to bet my last Boston cream pie that if I were a fly on the wall and watched you read, I would see you distracted. If that's true, then you may understand these things, but you're not practicing them. But I don't have any other thing. It's those two things and then lots of practice. That's it. That's all. I don't have there's no special recipe other than that. I don't subvocalize. I don't distract myself when I'm reading, and I've been doing it for a long time. So I've had a lot of practice, but that's it. Michael Feeney asks, "If you had to start a new career," again with a new career, I don't know what you people are thinking, "what would it be?" And his restriction is it can't be something you've already done. And I would love to try publishing, a career in publishing somehow. I don't know how I would get in or what I would do, but I would love to try that. It's adjacent to what I do, but I've never done it. Okay, we're going to stop at Michael Feeney because this is another huge video. Good Lord. I'll stop this and we'll start right up again. We'll try and finish in the next video. So I'll be right back.